I saw these line of white angels.
Can you imagine the terror of waking up in silence only to realize you're inside a coffin, buried alive? It sounds like something from a horror movie, right? But these stories are 100% real. People who were declared dead only to open their eyes during their own funeral. These are the real-life nightmares of people who came back from the dead inside the coffin. Woke up inside his own funeral. Something terrifying happened during a funeral in Peru. A 24-year-old man named Watson Dorio had gone for a simple dental treatment, a root canal, but soon after, he got sick with a fever and chills. Doctors declared him dead, and his family, filled with grief, prepared his funeral. At the open casket ceremony, just when everyone was mourning, they noticed something chilling. His chest moved. Panic spread across the room as the family realized he might still be alive. They called for help immediately. When the doctors arrived, they checked Watson and found that he still had weak signs of life. He was rushed to the hospital, but sadly, he was declared dead again. His family now believes he was never really dead in the first place, but maybe still under the effect of anesthesia from his dental procedure. Authorities are investigating the case. Stories like this remind us that even with today's medical tools, mistakes can happen. And sometimes people are buried before they're truly gone. Woke up inside the morgue? Something truly chilling happened in a morgue in Fair, Russia. A man believed to be dead suddenly started moving on the cold metal table. A security camera captured the shocking moment. His arms twitched, and then he pulled the white sheet off his face. Slowly, like someone waking from a nightmare, he tried to sit up. His body looked weak, like it didn't want to work, but somehow he pushed through the pain. With shaky steps, he stood up and began walking, his movements unsteady and strange. The footage ended right there, leaving behind more questions than answers. Was it a miracle? A mistake? No one knows what happened to him after that, but one thing is clear, that man came back to life in the last place anyone would expect. A scene straight out of a horror movie turned out to be terrifyingly real. Came back after 45 minutes of death. Tony's night turned into a nightmare no one saw coming. In West Carlton, Ohio, his wife Melissa noticed his breathing sounded strange while he was asleep. She tried waking him, but he didn't move. Panic hit her hard. She called for help and started CPR, doing everything she could to save him. Paramedics arrived fast and rushed Tony to the hospital. Doctors tried their best, but after 45 minutes with no heartbeat, they gave up. Tony was officially declared dead. His family was heartbroken. It felt like all hope was lost. But something unbelievable happened next. Tony's son, Lawrence, ran to his father's body and shouted, "Dad, you're not going to die today!" And just like that, the heart monitor beeped. The doctors were shocked, but jumped into action again. This time they brought Tony back. His heartbeat returned, and slowly he opened his eyes. Tony later said, "God raised me from the dead." Even the doctors couldn't explain how he survived. It was a miracle that left everyone speechless. Raised from the dead. This happened right in the middle of an airport. Pastor Lee Stone King had spent years talking about miracles, but on November 12, 2003, he became one himself. While in Sydney, Australia, he suddenly collapsed from a massive heart attack. Paramedics rushed in and did everything to save him. They shocked him 10 times, but nothing worked. His heart had completely stopped. After 45 minutes with no heartbeat, everyone thought it was over. But then something strange happened. His heart suddenly started beating again. Doctors and medics stood there shocked, unable to explain it. What came next was even more surprising. Lee not only survived, but fully recovered. 1 year later, doctors told him something unbelievable. His heart was completely healthy, and the disease that caused the attack was gone. Lee calls it a miracle. He says it wasn't just medicine, it was the fire of the Holy Ghost. God raised me from the dead, he says. His story is more than just survival. It's a powerful reminder of how strong faith can be, even in the face of death. Girl wakes up inside her own coffin. The moment everyone thought was her goodbye turned into pure shock. In Mexico, a little girl named Camila Mendoza, just 3 years old, had been suffering from fever and stomach pain. Her mother rushed her to the hospital where a doctor checked her and sent her home with medicine. But things only got worse. Her parents, now scared, took her to another doctor, who quickly sent them to the emergency room. Tragically, the doctors there said Camila had died from dehydration. Her heartbroken family prepared a funeral for her the very next day, saying their final goodbyes. But what happened next stunned everyone. While people were gathered at her viewing, someone noticed the glass on her coffin was fogging up. Most people thought it was just from the light or heat, but her grandmother felt something was wrong. She ran to the coffin, looked closer, and saw Camila's eyes moving. She felt a tiny pulse. The family screamed for help and rushed her back to the hospital. Sadly, after trying again to save her, the doctors declared her dead once more. Now, the family is blaming the hospital for declaring her dead too soon. Message from the other side. Something terrifying happened during a simple hike in Arizona. Tina Hines, a fit and healthy woman, was about to enjoy the day with her husband when she suddenly collapsed. Her skin turned purple and she stopped breathing right in front of him. In panic, her husband started CPR on the spot. She came back to life for a few moments, but it wasn't over. In the ambulance, she had to be revived again and again. Tina was clinically dead for 27 minutes. Doctors didn't expect her to come back, but she did. The moment Tina woke up, she couldn't speak, but she grabbed a pen and scribbled 2 chilling words: "It's real." Later, she explained that she saw heaven while she was gone. She felt it, saw it, and believed it with all her heart. Her story lines up with a 2013 study where researchers saw strange brain activity in rats just before death, almost like deep thinking. But for Tina, this wasn't science. It was something much more powerful. To her, heaven isn't just a belief, it's a place she says she's already seen. Journey to heaven for 11 minutes. Everything was normal until Charlotte Holmes went for a simple heart checkup. But then things took a shocking turn. Her blood pressure suddenly shot up, and doctors rushed to admit her, fearing a stroke or heart attack. But before they could do much, her heart stopped completely. For 11 whole minutes, Charlotte was declared clinically dead. What happened next is what left everyone speechless. Charlotte says her soul floated above her body and she watched the doctors try to save her. Then she felt herself being lifted and guided by angels into what she calls heaven. She couldn't fully explain what it looked like, but said it was more beautiful than anything she had ever seen. She even saw her late family members standing near a glowing light that she felt was God. Charlotte came back to life and her story became one of the most powerful accounts of the afterlife ever told. Zach came back after 20 minutes dead. Everything was normal until it wasn't. Zach Clemens, a strong and healthy teenager from Texas, suddenly collapsed during gym class while running. His heart had completely stopped. His friends and teachers did everything they could, but by the time Zach reached the hospital, there was no pulse for 20 minutes. Doctors were preparing to call him dead. But then, out of nowhere, Zach came back to life. He was flown by helicopter to a children's hospital in Fort Worth, where he finally opened his eyes days later, shocking everyone. But what Zach remembered during those 20 silent minutes was even more unbelievable. He told his family that he saw glowing white angels and a man with long hair and a thick beard who he realized was Jesus. Zach's mother, Teresa, believed this wasn't just science. This was a miracle. Many who heard his story were left speechless, questioning the line between life and death. For Teresa, her son's return was proof that something greater was at work. Declared dead, but she was still breathing. Something truly shocking happened in New York. An 82-year-old woman was declared dead at a nursing home. They even sent her body to a funeral home. But just before 2:10 in the afternoon, the staff there noticed something terrifying. She was breathing. This poor woman was alive the whole time. She had been pronounced dead earlier that day at 11:15 in the morning, but thankfully someone at the funeral home noticed she was still alive and rushed her back to the hospital. Now, the whole situation has raised serious questions. How could such a big mistake happen? Authorities are investigating, and both the state health department and the attorney general's office are involved. What's even more shocking is that the nursing home had been praised as one of the best in 2022 and 2023. The funeral home didn't say much, only that they respect the family's privacy. But this incident has left people across the country asking, how does someone get declared dead when they're not? Screaming from the dead room. This shocking moment happened inside a morgue in Kenya. Peter Keegan had collapsed at home and was rushed to the hospital. Doctors said he was dead and his body was moved to the morgue. As the mortician was getting ready to inject chemicals to preserve his body, something terrifying happened. Just as the needle touched his skin, Keegan suddenly screamed in pain and woke up. The staff were so scared, some of them ran out of the room thinking they had just seen a dead man come back to life. But the hospital gave a different story. They said the family didn't wait for a death certificate and brought Keegan straight to the morgue because they were upset about the delay in treatment. The mortician was the first one to notice signs that he was still alive. This strange case left everyone shocked and raised serious questions. Can doctors really make such big mistakes? How close are we to burying people alive without even knowing? Buried woman found alive after 13 days. First, they buried her. Then, she came back. In a story straight out of a nightmare, 50-year-old Sherilyn Jackson from Philadelphia was declared dead after being found unconscious. Her own son and a social worker identified the body, and she was laid to rest in a cemetery in Trenton, New Jersey. The family held a funeral, grieving what they thought was the loss of their loved one. But just 13 days later, something happened that no one could explain. A phone call turned their grief into shock. Sherilyn was alive, found in a psychiatric hospital far from the grave where she had been buried. Officials launched an investigation right away. The body shown to the family by the medical examiner had looked like her, and they believed it. But now they were left asking, who did they really bury? While the family was relieved, they were also confused and heartbroken over the mix-up. The city began the process to dig up the body and find out the truth behind this chilling mistake. Girl wakes up at her own funeral in Zamboanga. The funeral had already started. Family and neighbors gathered in Zamboanga City, mourning a 3-year-old girl who had passed away from a high fever. Doctors had checked her pulse and declared her dead. Her parents were heartbroken and prepared for her burial the next day. But during the funeral, something unbelievable happened. A neighbor saw the girl's head move when the coffin was opened to adjust her body. Everyone froze in shock. Her parents rushed to the coffin, pulled her out, and gave her water as she slowly came back to life. Someone recorded the moment, and the video quickly spread online. Nurses later visited the home, and the girl was taken to a well-equipped hospital for treatment. This strange and emotional moment left people asking, was it a mistake by the doctors or something beyond science? Buried alive but woke up. She was zipped in a body bag, declared dead, and sent to a funeral home. But then her eyes opened. This is the shocking story of 20-year-old Tamisha Beauchamp from Detroit. Paramedics were called to her house, and after checking her pulse again and again, they said she had died. Without a second thought, they sent her body to the funeral home. But when the embalmer opened the bag, he froze. Tamisha's eyes were wide open. She was breathing. She was alive. Tamisha had been inside that bag for hours, and what happened next stunned everyone. Experts later believed it might have been a case of Lazarus syndrome, when the heart starts beating again after CPR. But even though she came back to life, being without oxygen for so long had already caused brain damage. Just 2 months later, Tamisha sadly passed away. Her family believes the first medical mistake took her life. Still, they held on to the little comfort that for a brief moment, she had returned. Man declared dead wakes up in the morgue. First, it looked like a tragedy. Paul Murrah from Kenya was found after what seemed like a suicide attempt. The doctors gave him a drug called atropine, which slowed his heartbeat so much that they thought he was dead. Without checking further, they told his family he had passed away. His loved ones, heartbroken and crying, started planning his funeral. No one knew Paul was still alive, just breathing so slowly that no one noticed. Then came the moment no one expected. Almost 24 hours later, while morgue workers were getting ready to embalm his body, Paul suddenly opened his eyes. Yes, just before they began the procedure, he came back to life. His family was shocked but overjoyed when they heard the news. While they were thankful, they were also angry with the hospital for declaring him dead by mistake. The hospital started an investigation, and many people began questioning how such errors could happen. Paul is now recovering, and he's living proof that sometimes fate has other plans. Frozen but alive. She was just 19, driving through the icy roads of Minnesota to visit her parents when everything went wrong. Jean Hilliard's car slipped and got stuck in a ditch. With freezing wind and temperatures below 25 degrees, she made a tough choice: to walk miles to her friend's house. But Jean was wearing only a jacket, pants, and cowboy boots. The cold hit her hard, and her body began shutting down. In the middle of nowhere, her legs gave up, and she collapsed in the snow, completely alone, freezing for 6 long hours. The next morning, a rancher stepped outside and saw something shocking in his yard. A young woman lying in the snow, eyes wide open, frozen stiff. He thought she was dead, until he noticed tiny bubbles coming from her nose. Jean was rushed to the hospital, but she was so frozen that doctors couldn't even insert an IV. They thought she wouldn't survive. But by mid-morning, she started to move. By noon, she was talking. After 49 days in the hospital, Jean made a full recovery. Her story still leaves doctors speechless. It was as if the freezing cold somehow saved her life. Girl returns home 2 years after her funeral. She walked into her home 2 years after her own funeral. In Zambia, a 17-year-old girl named Winnie was declared dead after falling seriously ill. Her family held a full funeral, church service, body viewing, everything. They buried her, cried for her, and tried to move on, but then something happened that left everyone frozen. After 2 long years, Winnie suddenly came back, alive, and walked into her parents' house like nothing had happened. Her parents were speechless, unsure if this was a miracle or something else entirely. But the story took a darker turn when the truth started to unfold. Winnie claimed they had buried a banana tree instead of her. That sounded impossible until the grave was opened. Inside, they found bones and personal items her mother recognized as Winnie's. Authorities stepped in, and now the family is waiting for DNA test results to find out if the girl who returned is truly their daughter. What started as a shocking return has now turned into a mystery no one expected, and the police are now digging deeper to find out the truth. She woke up at her own funeral. They were ready to bury her, but then she opened her eyes. In Peru, 36-year-old Rosa shocked everyone when she suddenly woke up inside her coffin during her own funeral. Just days earlier, Rosa had been in a terrible car crash that killed her brother-in-law and badly injured her nephews. Doctors at the hospital told her family she was dead. Her body was prepared for burial, and her loved ones gathered to say goodbye. But just as the police carried her coffin, something unbelievable happened. Rosa moved, opened her eyes, and looked around. Panic turned into hope. Her family quickly opened the coffin and medics were called. They confirmed Rosa still had a heartbeat, though it was weak. She was rushed to the hospital and put on life support. Doctors later believed she had not died but fallen into a deep coma. Sadly, the joy was short-lived. After only a few hours, her health got worse, and Rosa passed away for real. Her story has left her family and doctors asking serious questions about how she was declared dead in the first place. The boy who woke up at his own funeral. This story starts with pure heartbreak. In Brazil, a 2-year-old boy named Kelvin Santos was being treated for pneumonia when doctors told his family the worst news: he had stopped breathing and was declared dead. His heartbroken family took him home to prepare for the funeral. But just before the ceremony, something shocking happened. Kelvin suddenly sat up inside his coffin and looked at his father. He calmly asked, "Dad, can I have some water?" Everyone froze in disbelief. His family was overwhelmed with joy, thinking they had just witnessed a miracle right in front of their eyes. But the joy didn't last. Moments after asking for water, little Kelvin lay back down and stopped moving again, this time for good. His parents, still in shock, rushed him to the hospital, but doctors confirmed that there were no signs of life. Still hoping for another miracle, the family delayed the funeral a bit longer, but nothing changed. Later that same day, Kelvin was buried. The family believed something had gone wrong at the hospital and filed a police complaint. An investigation was started, and the truth behind this heartbreaking event is still being searched for. The corpse that moved inside the coffin? During a funeral in Manado, Indonesia, something deeply disturbing was caught on camera. The family was standing around the coffin crying and praying when suddenly someone noticed a movement under the glass lid. It looked like the dead body inside was waving or pressing its hand against the glass. This strange moment shocked everyone, and the video quickly spread across the internet. People couldn't stop asking, was the person really dead, or had they somehow come back to life? Experts later stepped in to explain the mystery. They said the body's movement could be caused by something called post-mortem motion. After death, a body can still shift because of gases building up or changes in muscles and ligaments. This can sometimes make a hand twitch or move in ways that seem alive. Even though science has answers, the video still gives people chills and makes us wonder what really happens after we die. Buried alive at her own funeral. Something terrifying happened in Ecuador to a 76-year-old woman named Bella Montoya. She was rushed to the hospital after what looked like a stroke and a heart attack. Doctors looked at her and declared her dead. Her family, broken with grief, quickly arranged the funeral. But during the wake, when her body was lying in the coffin, her relatives heard strange sounds. Everyone froze. Then, with trembling hands, they opened the coffin. And what they saw left them shocked. Bella was breathing and moving. She was alive. They rushed her back to the hospital, and doctors quickly admitted her to intensive care. Her condition was serious, but she was alive, and that gave her family a small hope. Now, the health ministry is investigating how doctors could make such a huge mistake. They've even formed a special team to figure it out. Bella's family is thankful she survived, but they also want answers. How could someone be declared dead while still alive? What would you do if you woke up in a coffin, surrounded by darkness, with no one to hear you scream? These stories remind us how thin the line is between life and death. If this gave you chills, make sure to hit that subscribe button for more real-life horror and unbelievable true stories. And don't forget to like, share, and tell us in the comments. Which story shook you the most?